families that we worked with really early on in the beginning of repealability was the beautiful family of Gabby, Adam and their little daughter Layla. Layla was born with complex medical needs and unfortunately had a palliative diagnosis. We were initially approached by Gabby to support them with accessing an NDIS plan, but because Layla was less than 1 year old, it was incredibly hard for them and very difficult, and the family was in a constant state of survival, just getting through the next 24 hours. And so when we first met Gabby and Adam, Layla was only 3 months old, and our primary objective was to get them NDIS funding so that they could have community nurses come in and give some respite and reprieve to the family. Gabby was providing 24/7 care to Layla, and Layla's medical complexity meant that she needed suctioning regularly. She was on a lot of medical equipment. She needed round-the-clock supports for her seizure management and her medication structures. And so unfortunately, Gabby was completely housebound. She wasn't even able to hand washing without taking Layla outside with her to keep constant vigilance on what her needs and requirements were at any given time. Claire, the Director of Repealability, met with Layla's medical team from Perth Children's Hospital, and we rushed through an application and we chased up with the NDIS to expedite that process so that Layla would have community nurses with her in her home so that Gabby and Adam would be able to get some sleep. And we were successful in a really short turnaround to get those kinds of supports and services. We were gearing up to celebrate Layla's first birthday, and 2 days before Christmas and 2 weeks before she turned 1, unfortunately Layla lost her battle and she passed away due to medical complexity in Perth Children's Hospital. And so her first birthday celebration turned into a funeral service. Now, because we had worked with the family intensely over the course of 12 months, we obviously went to honour her and her beautiful little life and the legacy that she had created. And it was an incredibly difficult situation in terms of attending a child's funeral. It's not a nice setting for anyone to have to attend, but it was particularly confronting at Layla's funeral because there were so many children in attendance that were also palliative, and the sheer volume of medical interventions that happened during this service was immense. There was children being suctioned, there was children on high flow oxygen that were constantly being mitigated and managed. There were children having episodes and seizures during the service and the ceremony. And post that session, we spoke at length with some of those families and with Gabby and Adam, and there was an overwhelming sense that these families didn't want to have their child attend, but there was simply nowhere else for them to go. There was no family supports that would be able to provide this medical attention that these children needed. There was no formalised support centre that their families could go to. So many of these families had to bring their children along to a service that very well could be their child next. On the drive home, Claire and I, after advocating for families for quite some time, had acknowledged that there's been common themes of no support and no care and no services for these families, even children that are palliative, let alone children that are just medically complex or have profound disabilities that require the same kind of supports and services across their lifespan. There was nowhere for them to be and nowhere for them to go, and that's how the creche was born and this model started. So we began investigating at length whether or not anything like this existed, and if it didn't, how could we make that happen? So it kick-started what has been an extremely long process of research, feasibility studies, testing, anecdotal research, gathering, talking to families, and exploring legislation.